This is Pam. The topic for today is bowel problems in multiple sclerosis. And this is research. This is very, very important research. If you are diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, chances are you're dealing with some type of bowel problems or GI tract problems, digestive issues, etc. And constipation and fecal incontinence, meaning like fecal leakage, are two of the most common problems in MS patients. And there was a new study that was just put out this year, 2023. And in that study, they were saying that a huge number, a very significant number of people diagnosed with MS, the 5 years before their diagnosis, before their first attack, I should say, so 5 years before their first attack, they had a lot of digestive problems. They had a lot of bowel problems before. And this is very different than the general population. So I'm going to go through some research today just to kind of show that this is really well established in the scientific community, that they know that when we have multiple sclerosis, we have all kinds of bowel problems and GI tract issues. And then we're going to talk about kind of why they think we have these issues, which is a belief, it's a theory. And then we're going to actually look at why we have this. So this is really more evidence that MS is an infectious disease. This is proof that MS is caused by a parasitic infestation. And so these bowel issues, they really impact our quality of life. And I'm going to share with you what we're using, what our students are using to help resolve these issues, but then also how to recover from multiple sclerosis by treating the parasites that are causing the different types of constipation and sometimes diarrhea for some people, and also fecal incontinence. If we haven't met, my name is Pam Bartha, and I am the author of Become a Wellness Champion and the founder of Live Disease Free. And I am so excited to share this more evidence. I'm building this huge case that multiple sclerosis is an infectious disease caused by a parasitic infestation. There is so much evidence. It's ridiculous. And so I'm going to actually put this all together on an infographic. And my hope is that if you find this information to be what you need, it's your answer, it makes sense, then please share this with other groups, share this with different parasite groups, but also MS groups, share this with different types of practitioners. It is really exciting that this information is getting out, and I'm having people from all over the world, even healthcare professionals. We've had a lot of healthcare professionals work in our Live Disease Free program because they couldn't recover with the disease-modifying immunosuppressive drugs, but treating parasites, that is how they recover. So this is a topic that impacts pretty much everyone that has multiple sclerosis, but also other chronic diseases. So as I mentioned, it's been known for years and years that when you have MS, that you have some type of digestive disorders, conditions, bowel issues, etc. And in 2023, this year, there was a Canadian study, and they looked at people that had MS, and they looked back to the years before they had their first MS attack. And at least up to 5 years before their first initial MS attack, they had significant bowel problems. So this was quite a fairly good sized study. There were 7,500 people that had multiple sclerosis that were diagnosed, so they were following them. And there were also 36,000 people that didn't have MS. So they compared this to the control group of healthy people, or maybe not healthy, but people that didn't have MS. So in the years before the diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, people were 1.42 times, this is just one study, 1.42 times, so almost 50% higher or more likely to see a doctor for gastritis, which is inflamed lining of the stomach, and duodenitis, which is inflammation of the first part of the small intestine, which causes things like pain and indigestion and just feeling sick. and then 1.46 times higher or more likely to, so again, that's about 50% more likely to visit a doctor for diseases of the esophagus where we're having a difficult time swallowing, or maybe we have GERD. Double or 2 times more likely to receive a drug for constipation. So this gives us a really big clue. The years before we were diagnosed with MS, we had this going on. And I really believe this adds, and it's not I believe, this adds a lot more evidence that our microbiome in our gut was really off the years before we came down with MS, and that's caused by parasites. And so the awesome thing is that as we treat the parasites, then we can actually recover from MS, not just get rid of the bowel problems, but also recover from multiple sclerosis. So again, 2 times more likely to receive a drug for constipation, also twice as likely to receive a drug for nausea or to prevent vomiting. So a lot of digestive tract disorder, or symptoms, I should say. So these researchers concluded that gastrointestinal symptoms appear to be a common sign or symptom before the onset of multiple sclerosis. Maybe let me know in the comments, have you, before you were diagnosed, or if you were diagnosed with MS or even a different autoimmune disease, did you have gut issues? Did you have maybe nausea, maybe sometimes vomiting, maybe diarrhea, maybe alternating diarrhea and constipation? Maybe you had bloating, gas, pain in your stomach, GERD, acid reflux, all of these different things, incontinence where there's leakage of the stool. So let me know if you've had any GI tract symptoms before, even before you were diagnosed. So yes, you'll have them when you have the disease, but before a diagnosis, did you have any symptoms of bowel problems? You can keep it just simple to yes, I had bowel problems years before. For myself, just to stop for a minute, like I was diagnosed with MS when I was 28 years old, and I had gut issues all my life as a young child. I had, like, even when I was very, very young, I was a colicky baby. And I had constipation, which became a lot worse when I was in my pre-adolescence and then in my teens and as a young adult. I literally would have a bowel movement once a week. It was really awful. And whenever we ate like Chinese food or had a hamburger, I would be laying on the floor with severe pain. So I had digestive tract symptoms years and years before the MS. So this was very common for me. So again, we're going to tease this out a little bit later and just kind of see like how this relates to parasites. So there's another study, and the title of this study is called Bowel Symptoms Predate the Diagnosis Among Many Patients with Multiple Sclerosis. And this was a 14-year cohort study. And they found that almost 1/3 of MS patients with bowel symptoms reported that they had bowel symptoms 1 to 3 years before their first MS attack. So this is a really big clue as to what causes MS. All of these people, and probably more, that like some of us just live with these symptoms and we don't really believe that they're a problem. We don't like them, but we don't know that there's anything we can do. We think maybe that's just part of who we are, or it's just part of life. And so they studied the bowel problems of a group of MS patients over 14 years, and they discovered that the average time between the first bowel symptom and the first MS attack was about 4 years, and that was pre-MS fatigue and sensory disturbances. They were all associated with the bowel symptoms of with the first MS attack. So these researchers concluded that understanding signs and symptoms before the first MS attack may provide insights into understanding the disease progression of multiple sclerosis. And then a third study in 2010, it's another scientific article, reported that constipation affected 29 to 43%, and fecal incontinence affected over 50% of MS patients in the UK, in the United Kingdom. And they stated that very little was known about how the MS patients were managing these bowel problems. And what's really interesting is that trying to manage these bowel problems by the MS patients, it was rated as being equal. It equally impacted their life when compared to mobility issues with respect to their quality of life. So they felt, these MS patients felt that just trying to manage their bowel symptoms, their bowel problems, had an equal impact on their quality of life to them suffering with mobility issues. So that's really significant. And it's true, like when we're backed up and we feel toxic and we feel bloated and we have pain and we feel like we can't eat, we feel nauseous, that really, really impacts our quality of life. So although participants in that study used a wide range of strategies to manage their bowel function, very few strategies were helpful. Nearly 2/3 of the MS patients have at least one GI tract symptom that persists for 6 months or more. And this is another group that we're sharing. So they found that so this is another whole group of experts. They found that about two-thirds of MS patients have at least one GI tract symptom that persists for 6 months or more. And some of the more common ones they mention are difficulty swallowing, heartburn, nausea, upper abdominal pain, bloating, and an easy sense of fullness that tends to get worse after eating, diarrhea, constipation, and fecal incontinence. So, therefore, like when you look at all the studies, and there's quite a few, and you just look at different MS websites, the experts, the universities that are, the experts for MS, they all know that bowel problems are a really big part of multiple sclerosis. And this has been known for many, many years. And so the experts, and I'm saying the neurologists, the neurologist professors, the ones that are doctors that are treating us, they really believe that it's inflammation in the central nervous system, and they don't know what's causing the inflammation. It's our immune system is attacking our own nerves, and I've disputed that a lot. There's a lot of evidence that shows that there's very little evidence for that. The immune system is fighting, but it is fighting something very specific. It's fighting different types of parasites and infections. That's what its job is, right? The immune system is there to protect us from parasites. So they believe, they're just assuming, this is a theory, a belief, because they don't know what causes MS and there is no cure. So they think, well, it probably has something to do with, there's a disconnect, a breakdown in the communication between the central nervous system and the nerves in our digestive tract. But when you look at all of the different symptoms, they really, really, and this is what science has proven, is that parasites cause all kinds of digestive tract symptoms, disorders, dysfunction, etc. And so when we look past the theory, and theory has really not helped us at all with respect to multiple sclerosis or other autoimmune diseases, we still don't know what caused them. There still is no cure. So let's look at the science. So the science shows us that it is proven that many, many types of parasites, probably all of them, cause different symptoms of pain and gas and constipation, diarrhea, alternating diarrhea and constipation, fecal incontinence, and so much more. Acid reflux is another one. So tapeworms, which are flatworms, and flukes, which are also flatworms, and roundworms, but also single-cell protozoa, which they're like a single-cell parasite, but they're a little more sophisticated than a bacteria. And then also different types of bacteria can cause all kinds of gut issues, and fungi. So all of these parasites can cause bowel problems, GI tract problems, etc. So if we just talk very quickly about a couple of them, just so you have this, and you can Google search, you can look up tapeworm and constipation, or tapeworm and digestive symptoms, or GI tract symptoms, or tapeworm and diarrhea. And you'll find very commonly that they say tapeworms can cause abdominal pain, nausea, diarrhea, constipation. And they love to fully develop in our intestine, especially in the small intestine. Roundworms. You can do a Google search of roundworms, and you can find lots of, different studies, and you can find government websites and even pharmaceutical websites, and they all say, yeah, roundworms can cause abdominal pain and nausea, vomiting, constipation, alternating constipation and diarrhea, bloody stools, etc. And then we know that H. pylori can cause heartburn, acid reflux, bloating, nausea, vomiting, indigestion, flukes, which are flatworms, and we can have intestinal flukes, and I'm sure I had them, and I've got a whole video and a blog post. If you go to livediseasefree.com, you can actually read up about intestinal flukes. And yes, we could also have liver flukes, but right now we're talking about the GI tract. But you can actually look at pictures of our students that have passed. So last week, I did large roundworms in MS, so I shared a whole bunch of pictures of I did the case study. Sorry, they're all mixing together. So I did a case study, but there are still a lot of parasite pictures for that case study of a student right now that is recovering from multiple sclerosis, and she actually just had a bunch of people over and had a big meal, and she's doing so much more, and she's literally just on her first treatment cycle, and you can see some of the parasites that she has passed. So, and then I have another blog post on flukes. You can see the pictures, you can watch the video, or you can just look at the pictures and read. Some people like reading, some people like to watch videos. And then I shared another blog post of very large roundworms that our students are passing, recovering from MS, but other chronic diseases also. So toxoplasmosis is a type of small protist, and there's babesia. So there's a lot of different protists that will cause all kinds of symptoms, including digestive symptoms. Also, there are many studies that are linking multiple sclerosis with different types of parasites, and I've shared all of that with you. Dr. Alan McDonald found filarial small roundworms in the central nervous system of every MS subject that he tested. He also found juvenile tapeworm larvae sacs, so sacs of these little immature tapeworms growing in the central nervous system of MS patients. And that is a condition that's well known by the CDC. It's called neurocysticercosis. Also, there's over 100 years of studies that are linking MS to a malaria-type protist, possibly babesia or something similar to that, and also over 100 years of research linking Borrelia or a spirochete. So Borrelia is the bacteria that causes Lyme disease, and it's a spirochete bacteria. It looks like a corkscrew. And there's over 100 years of research where they have been finding these spirochetes in MS patients. So with multiple sclerosis, we know that there are multiple parasites involved. It's not just the big worms. It's very often the big, the small, and fungi. Since I was diagnosed with MS, a lot of hero doctors were talking about candida, and now they're also talking about mold. So we're out of balance. We have too many different types of parasites, and many different types of parasites can cause all kinds of gut issues. And they are found, so number one, MS has associated with a lot of gut issues. And we know that parasites cause gut issues, and they can cause heartburn, they can cause all kinds of symptoms. And then we know that with MS that there's lots of research showing that MS is a parasitic infestation. And then third, we have all of these wellness champions that have followed the Live Disease-Free plan, and they get ready to treat, and we're going to talk about what they're doing to resolve these bowel problems and then how to recover from multiple sclerosis, because we want to recover. We don't want to just live on a supplement for constipation, because very often the colon becomes more lazy, and then things don't work as well, and then we've got to find something else. So we want to get to the root cause, right? We want to treat the parasites that are causing our gut issues. So why do experts predict that multiple sclerosis is like, I want to backtrack for a minute. So there's the 2017 MS criteria for diagnosing and treating MS. So around the world, there's this panel of experts, and they decide how MS is diagnosed and it's treated. And they believe that we only look at lesions, and I forgot to mention, but there's lots of science showing that lesions are caused by parasites in the central nervous system. But they're like, no, we don't know what causes the lesions. We just know that with MS, they have specific lesions in specific locations, and over time they change. And they also look at our spinal fluid, and they're looking for antibodies. And we know that antibodies are produced by our immune system in response to infection. And so our body's going to produce antibodies against different types of parasites. So there is such a huge, overwhelming amount of evidence that MS is caused by parasites. So why are they saying that there's no value in looking at the spinal fluid for parasites? Why? Well, if you look at who funds the 2017 McDonald criteria for how we diagnose and treat MS, I think your answer is there. So it's funded by the very companies that are selling the treatments for MS, the disease-modifying immunosuppressive treatments. So I'm not anti-pharmaceutical. We use, like our students and myself have used pharmaceuticals to treat parasites, but if we don't know what causes MS, and there's such a huge, huge link between multiple sclerosis and parasites, then and they don't know what causes MS, then why won't the experts allow research, and why will they not promote research to see if there are specific parasites, to see if they can duplicate the results of Dr. Alan McDonald finding the tapeworm larvae in the central nervous system, the small filarial worms, the Borrelia, and all the other studies that have been coming out for over 100 years. Why are we not trying to duplicate it and prove them wrong even? We're not. It's just, no, we're not going there. We're just simply going to just treat the immune system because the immune system has gone haywire, and we are going to suppress the immune system. So I was speaking with a professor from a university and also listening to Dr. Alan McDonald, who's a pathologist, and both of them have said, if MS is caused by a parasitic infestation, and then we're taking drugs to suppress our soldiers, our immune system, that's a very dangerous thing to do because it makes us weaker and it allows the parasites to take over our body more quickly. So that is really important to consider. So how do we resolve the constipation and the diarrhea? So let me first talk about constipation because that is the most common that I have experienced. And we've worked with hundreds and hundreds of students from many, many countries, probably close to 20 countries by now. So with respect to constipation, there are many ways that these parasites can really slow down the mobility of our stool out of our, to leave our body. And so what we have found is really helpful is, number one, is the diet. We first have to decrease the carbs because they love the carbs. So when we decrease the carbs low enough, we get them down to 30 to 40 total grams of carbs, closer to 30, you'll notice more improvements. Get the carbs down tremendously. And then you have to use an aid to help move the bowels until you're treating. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Live Disease-Free plan. And again, we start with a diet, and if we have constipation right away, we start with a supplement. Most of our students so the students I work with are really sick. They have MS, ALS, PLS, Parkinson's, and they usually have pretty significant constipation. Oxy powder works really well. It's ozonated magnesium to make sure to find the right one. You can find a link to it on our website, livediseasefree.com. and it's just ozonated magnesium. It's by the company Global Health. And they find that taking 1, 2, or 3 capsules and possibly 4, don't start high, start with smaller amounts before bed, that they have a bowel movement in the morning. And there's other things that we can do too. So any kind of activity that we can do will help to move the bowels. And I know that sometimes we're quite disabled. So whatever you can do, sometimes even drinking a little cup of warm water first thing in the morning helps. Sometimes even massaging your abdomen helps, just kind of encouraging the massaging, like from the bottom right-hand corner up, down, and down to the, like an upside down U, across under your ribs, and then down the right-hand side. And that's helping to move the stool. But really, the biggest factor is a supplement. And for most people, the oxy powder works really well. For a few students, the constipation is so brutal and it just isn't enough. So then they'll use a mixture of oxy powder and then a blend of herbs similar to vitality capsules. Extra strength vitality capsules by Dr. Daniels is a great supplement. And so that carries a few different fibers that help to clean the lining of the intestine, but it also will have a type of herbal laxative, either senna or cascara sagrada, added to it. So sometimes a combination of oxy powder, but our students always start with oxy powder because that usually works fine. But for the odd person, if it's really, really severe, they'll use a combination. And they'll usually take it at night before bed so they can have one bowel movement. And if you find you take too much, then you just know that's too much and you just back off. And you just find what works for you. And then as our students, they're following the diet, they're getting the carbs low, they're getting their bowels moving, they're supporting their sleep to make sure they're sleeping well at night. They're going through the checklist for healing. They're looking at their blood work, supporting areas that need it. Maybe it's their thyroid, maybe it's their blood iron, it could be their vitamin B12, etc. So all the areas that need support get support. And so they're going through and decreasing the wireless radiation in their home, especially when they're sleeping, and also making sure they don't have mold in the home. So they're doing a whole bunch of things and more to support the body. So they're feeling a lot better. They're sleeping at night, they're having daily bowel movements, their carbs are lower, and they have tremendous improvements in their symptoms. So number one, they don't feel all plugged up and gassed and bloated and pain. And I should mention too, if they have diarrhea, they do not eat raw vegetables. It's fine to cook, saute, steam, oven roast your vegetables, and just eat the vegetables that agree with you that are low carb. So that could be things like maybe zucchini doesn't bother you, or greens or yellow string beans, or cauliflower. And it really depends. Like there's one lady that, just by taking out cooked kale, her diarrhea just completely stopped. And she had diarrhea for years, whereas somebody else can eat cooked kale and collards, etc. So you just have to really listen to your body. Your body will tell you if you get gas and you get stomach pain, avoid that vegetable for now. But the nice thing is when you treat the parasites, you're not going to have the bowel problems forever. So our students that treat the parasites, eventually they don't need the supplements to have regular daily bowel movements. They're able to go on their own. Sometimes for the first time in many, many years, they're just so incredibly excited. And so when you have the stool, the waste moving regularly every day, you don't get that buildup of toxins where you're getting more foggy head and more depressed and anxious, and your liver is just struggling to keep up. So use the supplements as you are recovering. I'm going to go to your questions. If you have any questions, go ahead and type them in the question box. So once we're ready to treat and we're feeling a lot better, then we are energy tested and we use a combination of an oxidizing agent. So we do enemas, which really helps to clear out the parasites out of the large intestine. We can take it orally to clear out the parasites out of our blood, and that will reach a little bit. It'll be helpful in organs and central nervous system a little bit, not enough on its own. And we're using herbs, antimicrobial herbs, and we're using parasite drugs that we test well for. We use a practitioner to get energy tested to see which of the parasite drugs we test well for. So we're not doing stool analysis just because I just haven't found a stool test that is worth the cost at this time. Things will change. The more awareness, the more interest, the more the labs are really working at this area, then we are going to have better tests. But because this has been ignored so much, I just don't feel that a $500 to $1,000 or $1,500 test that just tells you have possibly candida or anaerobic bacteria, possibly a couple of entamoeba or blastocystis hominis, like a couple of small protists. It's not what's causing this horrible, horrible gut problems, the bowel incontinence, et cetera, that we're dealing with. So this is why we just get ready to treat, and we treat. And like one of our students, I'm just thinking of her right now, she's in the class and she finished one treatment cycle for sure. I don't think she started on her second one, but she had such horrible, horrible constipation, and the oxy powder wasn't enough. And then she brought in vitality capsules, and it was still kind of not agreeing with her. And she just kept persisting and persisting. And then she started doing the enemas, and she couldn't hold them very long. And, sometimes we can feel really like aggravated from it, right? Because we've suffered so long. And now she's like, oh my gosh, my life has completely changed. And this is 3 months later. And she's like, I feel like a different person. She went back to work already, and work is going really well for her. And that's the kind of stuff that just brings tears to my eyes, because people are suffering. And I talked to some people today, and they're suffering, and they have suffered so terribly, where they're in so much pain that they just don't feel like they even want to live anymore. And I want to tell you that there is hope for you. It's not that hard. Like, treating these parasites is not that hard, and we don't have to live with this. So it is time for change for sure. So I explained to you like how we get the bowels moving. And of course, it's the parasites that are causing the constipation. And obviously, if we have diarrhea, we do not need to take a supplement to get the bowels moving. Then we need to slow things down. Sometimes binders can be helpful. So one binder is activated charcoal, and it works really well, and it's very easily accessible. Don't take it for long periods of time, because it will also bind to our vitamins, our fat-soluble vitamins. So taking it just short term, if let's say if you had a bout of diarrhea or food poisoning, it's wonderful for that. But there's also things like a really good type of zeolite from BioPure is a safe one. It's called ZeoBind. There's also food grade bentonite clay. So these type, especially if you're dealing with a lot of toxins from the parasites and you're just feeling awful, they can help to bind the toxins and carry them out through the stool. But we still need something to move the stool, the waste outside of us, and that would be a supplement. So, but the binders are great if you're dealing with the diarrhea, and also just avoiding the raw foods and going really, really low carb. It just will stop the diarrhea, the inflammation, the pain. So you can do a lot with diet. And I wanted to mention too that I have the Live Disease-Free Diet Guidelines online for free. There's a little short cheat sheet. There's also a 3-minute video. There's a bunch of videos on YouTube and on Facebook. On YouTube, Live Disease Free, we have a playlist where you can actually listen to different videos of what I eat for breakfast, dinner, and supper. But again, if you have diarrhea, don't eat all the greens. You can eat them later once you've healed. But steam, saute, oven roast, and stir fry your vegetables that agree with you at this point in time. So this whole bowel problem, it's another huge piece of evidence that confirms that multiple sclerosis is an infectious disease caused by a parasitic infestation, and a lot of the parasites are in the digestive tract, in the gut. And I wanted to, before I go to your questions, I also wanted to mention too, like with Dr. Perlmutter's book, Brain Maker, he talks about like some of his patients had fecal transplants. And that's where you take the stool from a healthy donor, and good luck trying to find a healthy donor. I don't know anyone in my family that honestly I would want to take their stool. But you can find stool, if you can find a healthy donor. And I mean, this is good for somebody who has C. difficile where you're on your deathbed and nothing is going to work. It will save your life, right? But there are people that have MS that have done fecal transplants and they have come out of wheelchairs. So I want you to think about that. If you're kind of changing the microbiome in the gut enough and you're coming out of a wheelchair, then yes, maybe you have lesions in your central nervous system, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that they're the only reason of why you're dealing with the mobility issues. It could largely be stemming from your digestive tract. And just be aware too that with fecal transplants, one of the people in his book, I won't say the name, but he was one of our students. So he did multiple fecal transplants. He would do a fecal transplant, he'd get out of the wheelchair for a few months, and then he'd be back in the wheelchair. And then he'd do another one, and then he would be out of the wheelchair again. But then after a while, the fecal transplants weren't working well enough. And I think, like, compare this to like a lawn. If you have a lawn with a lot of weedy crabgrass, you know, that horrible grass that has a very strong root structure and it's just really well established, and you sprinkle a little bit of good seed on top, it's not going to take, right? The weedy grass is going to choke it out, and the weeds will choke out the good grass. And that's really what happens in our gut. If we have an infestation of parasites, then we might notice some temporary symptom improvement, but those good guys cannot establish themselves. So that's not the answer. The answer is to treat those parasites, get them out of our system, and then, yes, bring back the good, absolutely. But then the good can reestablish themselves. So that was a really powerful thing that Dr. Perlmutter shared in his book, Brain Maker. Again, I'm going to go to a few of your questions. All right, lots of awesome comments. Hello, Huma and Stephen. You're very, very welcome. You have MS. I really hope that you look at our work and you do a little bit of digging, because you don't have to live with that horrible disease. Hello, Renee. You're very welcome. And Terry, you were diagnosed with IBS about 5 years before your MS diagnosis. Thank you so much for letting me know that. It's at least 50%, right? And probably a lot of people, it's probably higher, but a lot of people just don't even realize that. They're like, well, I've just lived with that all my life. I just thought that was just me, right? And so another person is sharing, yes, I have had it for a long time and it was getting worse lately. And Helen, hello, Nicholas, 1 year before and for 15 years after the MS diagnosis, you had IBS disease, chronic IBS. And Janice shared you had bloating and pain issues many years before you were diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. See, like, it's just so obvious, like parasites that are causing MS, it's so obvious, it's ridiculous. What we have to do is, I'm going to be building some resources for our doctors, for you guys to be sharing with your doctors to show them the evidence. Number one, show them the evidence of what you're dealing with. Show them the safety of the treatments and the effective treatment plans, etc., and the Live Disease-Free plan. Like, what we have found is that if you don't do the prep work, if you're infested with parasites and you feel absolutely horrible and you just want to treat parasites, you'll be flatlined on the couch. You'll feel absolutely horrible. You won't tolerate them. You'll probably have to quit. But when you go through the prep phase, when you're not feeding the parasites as much, you're decreasing. We can't starve them to death, but we can really make them less active. And supporting the body when you're feeling a lot better, you have helped to bring in immune modulation, and we're working on things all the time right now. And what's really exciting is frequency, like light frequency is another wonderful thing to support immune modulation and even support treating of the smaller parasites like the Borrelia. Because sometimes these these parasites, like even the small ones, like the big parasites infect us with the small ones, and then the small ones can cause immune suppression because they're causing, like, there's at least 14 ways in science that they've discovered that parasites can cause immune dysfunction and inflammation in our body. So they put us in this chronic state of inflammation, and then we are more susceptible to the parasites getting more out of hand because it's kind of like a war that's gone bad. So inflammation is our immune system fighting infections, fighting parasites, and sometimes wars can get out of hand, right? They can just become where our immune system is just the good guys are overwhelmed, they can't keep up, and then we end up with, a perpetual decline in our health. Hi, Lisa. Um, so Lisa followed the protocol. She said, I cannot believe how many huge worms emerged. Thin 4-inch long worms with white clumps that unfurl, tiny red and 3 foot long from the bowel. Wow. And then she shared, I had tapeworm roundworms, flat, slimy, deer flukes, go figure. And do you feel better? Like, do you feel a little better? I would think so. Like, when you pass these and when you treat them well enough, you feel like 20 years younger. You just feel normal. You feel balanced. You feel strong. You have a clear mind. You can handle stress. And we're going into some pretty crazy times with what's going on in the world, and we need to be strong. We need our health. So I would encourage all of you that if you feel you're dealing with parasites, to start treating them. And Nicola shared, I have had a couple of colonoscopies. Would they have seen worms? Well, that's the really weird thing, is that if you go online, you can look up worm, like do a search on YouTube, colonoscopy and worms, and you will see different colonoscopies that were done where they did find worms. But there's this disconnect with our gastroenterologists. They don't believe we have worms. They're not looking for them. They're looking for polyps. They're looking for pockets of inflammation. They're not looking for worms. So that is something that's really, really missed, unfortunately. Dr. Alan McDonald and Dr. Dale, I think that's Dr. Klinghardt. So the ART testing is the most help. We really don't recommend to stool tests at this time because it's just a lot of money that you're going to spend. Tapeworm larvae are found in the brain, tumors, Borrelia, Lyme, spirochetes, biofilm. In 100% of Alzheimer's autopsies, yes, in Alzheimer's too. It's not just MS, it's all chronic diseases. And that's Parkinson's, and that's dementia, and on and on and on. Cancer is an infectious disease. All autoimmune are caused by various types of parasites, and different parasites like to live in different parts of the body. What is the best way to preserve the microbiome when taking antibiotics or parasites? So really what we have found is raw sauerkraut, especially homemade. So when you get strong enough that you can make your own homemade, or maybe there's somebody in your area that makes homemade raw sauerkraut, is called a wild ferment. So when you take organic vegetables that are grown, they have the greatest diversity of health promoting microbes. And then when they're shredded and they're allowed to ferment, and that's something that our students do when they're feeling well enough to do that. And then you can just make that at home. Or sometimes there are people in like it might be at a farmer's market that you can find somebody that's doing a wild ferment in your area. They do have to make sure that it's sanitary, that they're doing it properly. You don't want to get sick. But a wild ferment raw sauerkraut is what's going to give you the greatest diversity. If you're too disabled and you cannot make raw sauerkraut, you can buy it, but it's usually sold as just like the yogurt that you can buy. They'll put a culture in it, so there will be maybe 2 or 3 or 4 different bacteria that they'll put a culture in with the vegetables, and that will take over. So you'll be getting mostly those few species, of microbes. So the homemade is definitely where you want to move to. And I do know that in Dr. Perlmutter's book, he talks about a fecal, not a fecal, a probiotic enema that has been helpful. And so you could take, and if I were doing it, I would use a probiotic that does not have prebiotics. And I would sterilize my water, even if you're using filtered water, because what if the machines were not clean enough? What if the chlorinator didn't work? And then you're putting water inside of you that is carrying certain bacteria, E. coli, parasites. Always sterilize any water that you're doing, even an enema or you're doing neti pot. Just sterilize it. Boil it for 10, 15 minutes, cool it down to, baby bottle where you would put your wrist in and it's just nice and warm. And you could put a few capsules of probiotics in that, but make sure it does not have prebiotics, because prebiotics will feed the parasites. And our students don't start with probiotic enemas either. They first decrease the parasite load, because if you introduce a lot of bacteria into your intestine and there's a lot of parasites there, they could potentially enjoy eating them. So this is a lot of things that we think about and plan for. So we first decrease the parasitic load to where people are feeling like tremendous. Raw sauerkraut is fine because that's a food. We avoid all other fermented foods because they do carry natural yeast, and we're usually loaded with fungi also. And it's not going to cause a yeast infection, but if our body is suffering with fungal overgrowth, we don't want to bring or introduce any more fungal components that might benefit the candida or mold that's in us, or our body just might not, be sensitive to it. So we keep things really simple. That way people are feeling a lot better. And once they're feeling a lot better, then they can test things, right? But if you don't get to that place where you get a good foundation where you're feeling a lot better, then you just don't get anywhere. So yes, and so like with the parasite drugs, like most of them are not antibiotics. They will treat specifically roundworms, flatworms, protists. Sometimes they will treat some bacteria. And there are lots of different herbs on the market. So usually for treating parasites, there's things like wormwood, black walnut, and cloves. Those are usually found in parasite formulas. But again, our students have found that taking those was not enough. That, like, you might pass a few parasites, but they still have their disease. We have found that those herbs we weren't passing the large tapeworms, the roundworms, the flukes. Really, the parasite drugs were much more helpful, but the herbs have their place. They're really helpful for the smaller parasites, absolutely. All right. And the thing with methylene blue, it definitely can be helpful for things like malaria type protists and also candida, so possibly babesia also. But you really have to be careful because Dr. Klinghardt mentioned that a lot of them are contaminated with metals. So that's something that you want to be really, really careful with. And the thing is too that, there are a lot of really wonderful people that are trying to figure this out, and it's really unfortunate that our doctors don't help us with this, because this should be their job, right? We should be able to treat parasites right away. We should be able to recover, get on with our life. And so people are quite desperate, and they're going to forums and they're trying different parasite drugs like ivermectin and fenbendazole, and sometimes they're passing things and sometimes they're not. They aren't necessarily using the right doses. But if you're at the place where you are like, I have been following you for a while, Pam, I believe that I have parasites and I just want to get better. I just want to move on. I want to make sure that I use effective treatments, that I recover. We can help you in the Live Disease-Free Plan. So the Live Disease-Free Plan, watch my masterclass training. It explains all the steps that we take to recover from not just MS, but all kinds of chronic disease. And sometimes husbands and wives do it together, where maybe one of them are sick and the other one just has gut issues, and they both improve their quality of life tremendously. So you can recover from chronic disease, and then you can restore the microbiome in your gut, and then you can have many, many more quality years of life. Last couple of questions here. So Araya, I think that's how you pronounce your name. What I would do is watch my masterclass training. And if you feel like it's important to watch it anyhow because you'll know all the steps, this is what works if you have a parasitic infestation. And then from there, then you can, if you're interested, if you want to find out more about the Live Disease Free Academy, then you would fill out a form at the end of my masterclass training. And then we send you the coachathon, and it explains all the steps in great detail, the cost and everything. And then some people just join. We've had a couple of people join today, at least two, possibly three or four. And then if you have questions, you want to join, but you have questions, you can meet with me and make sure it's a good fit for you. So I just want to make sure it's a good fit for you, that you really understand the process and that it's going to work for you. And yeah, so start with the masterclass training because that really helps you to understand the steps. It is amazing what I share in that training. It's from over 10 years of working with hundreds and hundreds of people. So you're just too scared that it will work for me. I am just so scared that it will work for me. It will work for you. You don't have to be scared. And Facebook user, um, but the doctors can't accept that. So the doctors have been trained for many years. I'll just wrap this up here, but they've been trained for many years that parasites are only found in underdeveloped countries. That is not true, because why is it that our dogs get parasites? Why is it that our horses, our cats, any of our animals do get parasites? We have parasites in the soil. Parasites come on the fruits and vegetables. Parasites, we can get them if we're eating raw sushi. They're supposed to freeze the fish well enough, but sometimes they're contaminated with eggs, etc. So there are many, many ways that we get parasites, but our doctors don't know that. And it's not that hard. Like, once you start thinking about it, you go, well, of course. Like, of course, parasites are all around us. Like, so yes, we do have filtered water most of the time, as long as the chlorinators work, but we don't have to get parasites from drinking raw water. We can get parasites from other people, we can get them from produce, we can get them from animals, pets, digging in the soil, walking barefoot on the grass and on the dirt. They can come in through your feet. That's not a good thing, right? So they're all around us. So there is an explosion of awareness and interest in parasites. So this is going to come, but for those of you that are dealing with chronic disease right now, and if you want to recover and get on with your life, you can't afford to wait for a few years. There is a battle going on, right? Because there's so much money. There's like treating chronic disease, autoimmune disease, is a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and they do not want to give that up. So it is kind of a battle going on there. And I believe that there are a lot of doctors that would love to help us. Some of them, their hands are tied. In Canada, it's virtually almost illegal to treat parasites. It's really ridiculous. They can give you an antibiotic, but they cannot give you a parasite drug. Why? These drugs are old. They're extremely safe. They're just not used to prescribing them because they've never thought they had to prescribe them. So this is coming, change is coming, not fast enough for me, but it is. So again, if this is the first time that you've met me, I have a ton of videos on YouTube and Facebook. Your most informative place will be on our website, livediseasefree.com. Look at the most recent blog posts and work your way back. You'll see incredible topics. You're going to see all kinds of parasite pictures and research and case studies of what our students are testing well for. It's individual, right? It's for educational purposes. And then if you're at the place where you're like, I'm sold, I know it's parasites, I need to get them out of me, I've been looking around and I can't find a doctor, I want to do it properly, I want to recover, then reach out and watch my masterclass training, book a time to chat with me, we'll send you the coachathon, watch it, you can join right away. But either way, if you need to talk to me or if you want to join right away, I will be talking with you because we'll be working together. I'll be helping you to build your game plan to recover from not just the bowel problems, but from whatever chronic disease you're dealing with. It's not disease specific. So we do have a lot of MS students, but there are other students that have Parkinson's and ALS and PLS and etc. So, with that, if you found this helpful, if you want to help us get the word out to help bring change so that we can even just having people listen to this video so that they can start to get the bowels moving, they're going to feel a lot better already. So please share this video and like and subscribe if you want to know when my next live training is. And with that, I'm going to let you go. Have a wonderful week. Take care and bye-bye for now.